Hi everyone, Mark Merrill with Farm. Fairness in Reporting Media. Taxes, threats, and fails. It's never ending, isn't it? Lots of news stories, new laws, and crashing failures in today's Fact Files program, folks. And all law-abiding Americans and Maine citizens. But before we get started, there's this.
So yet again, brothers and sisters at Border Patrol came through for us. We came here to the Border Patrol substation in Casa Grande. They gave me a whole stack of papers on the guy, my driver. So the name that he provided was false. His date of birth was false. He has been in the country illegally at least since 2011, just doing bad things. So he did bad things on the East Coast, came here to Arizona, and now he met me. So he's right now headed to the Pinal County Adult Detention Facility. He's got another charge for providing false information. We found some outstanding warrants that he had. Border Patrol is going to take a look at him once we're done with our stateside charges. So they helped me put this guy away for a little bit longer and hopefully get him out of the country so he can stop doing bad things. So yet again, brothers and sisters at Border Patrol came through for us.
Kind of make you feel better, does it, folks? This is what Tom Homan is doing. The man assigned to be the new Border Patrol czar. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, he's more of a czar than Kamala Harris ever was. Kamala Harris not even being close to being anywhere near the southern border or any border as far as the United States is concerned. So where do we start? Just 3 weeks into President Trump's second term. Well, no one is happy on both sides of the congressional or legislative aisles at the federal or state of Maine levels. So we'll just dive in and give you some brief audio and video if possible, like this gentleman right here from the Border Patrol. And also from Maine lawmakers, media representatives of Maine Policy Institute in an audio segment, and a few monetary stats to mix up the tax and spend salad chaos of contempt and extortion. It's mostly by Janet Mills and the mainstream media. Then all the way back, coming back into the state of Maine again, make the U-turn, and we come back where the deer and the antelope play as the only free animals, it seems, that should be able to get fed, sleep, and find peace of mind because humans who have lost their previous ability to support their families and keep jobs have better things to do than take bitter pills to take while Governor Mills' spending sprees add up to no end in sight. See this right here? It's right behind me. This is the billions of dollars that Janet Mills wants to spend, and at your expense, ladies and gentlemen, and mine, and maybe even our kids, our adult kids in my case, to bankrupt this state. We just turned 1.4 million people in this state just a few weeks ago. So the spending sprees have to stop. But they add up, according to the Republicans at the Maine GOP, to no end in sight. As it says right there, folks, over $1 billion in her spending. So after our Border Patrol person showed up here, folks, we have one here from the Sears Island about a year ago, where they want to go ahead and have new energy in this country, in this state, in the Northeast region. Thanks to Janet and some cooperation with some other bureaucrats and some people with this kind of money from overseas and south of here, beyond D.C., it seems. We have one to read from the Maine Morning Star story about Sears Island. So what is it? Well, you're looking at it right there now. Not to mention Janet Mills' mug. So here we go, folks. We're going to take a look at it real quick here and certainly give you the details on that. Sears Island. It says under the Maine Morning Star, you can go to Maine Morning Star, spelled out, Maine, M-A-I-N-E, morningstar.com, /brief/Maine-Republican-legislators write Trump asking for further assistance. The policy and politics for the Pine Tree State is what the Maine Morning Star is all about, folks. They come up with a picture right front and center on their website, front page. No port on Sears Island. The big red circle with a slash through it. Just like you see here. They want to have it right there. That's Sears Island, and that's the designated spot for it. And it's going to be costing, no thanks to you-know-who here, boo-hoo, cry, cry, against Donald Trump's mandates. The Republican legislators wrote the letter to Trump thanking him for his recent action on offshore wind and asking him to take it a step further. The letter sent at the end of last week was authorized by Representative Reagan Paul of Winterport. Offshore wind was a key issue for Paul in her re-election campaign last year after the state announced its hopes to build a port in her district to support its larger goals to develop 3,000, yeah folks, oh boy, 3,000 megawatts of offshore wind in the Gulf of Maine by 2040. See, folks, here they go again, kicking the can down the road, only now, instead of 2030 or 2035, which is creeping up on us, they have to kick it further down the road to make their point. Love the next line. Love the next line, folks. Again, this is mainemorningstar.com/brief/Maine-Republicans-legislators write Trump asking for further assistance or further help. Common sense, it says in the next paragraph, economics and environmental concerns are against the offshore wind projects proposed by Dems in the Gulf of Maine, said Paul in a news release. She went on to say that she and her Republican legislative colleagues are asking his administration, Trump's, to finish the job before irrevocable harm is inflicted on marine wildlife, coastal communities, and quality of life here. On the first day of Trump's administration, he issued the executive order for a temporary halt in new or renewed offshore wind leases. This is what's got Janet all in a tither, boys and girls. Oh, my gracious sakes. Trump can't do that. Oh, really, Janet? Watch him. And then a wrap-up, we're going to make this one short because we've got some others to get to, folks. But Maine Republicans not only were asking Trump to intervene to pass this halt in new offshore wind leases, but revoking the existing leases and permits in the Gulf of Maine. And the letter is referring to the 4 leases and areas auctioned off in October. Well, not telling all the truth or revealing what you're doing at that desk behind closed doors, is it, Janet? With Attorney General Fry? The letter also refers, I say again, it's also referring to four lease areas auctioned off in October 2024, as well as the lease for a research array that the state were awarded earlier in 2024 as well. The Federal Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, the agency within the U.S. Department of the Interior responsible for managing energy resources on the outer shelf, has outlined 8 lease areas off the coast of Maine, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. See? Not telling the whole truth, Janet. Naughty, naughty. So that's where that one's coming from, folks. And all this, part of this $1 billion right here you see behind me. It's not a good look, Janet. It really isn't. It stinks. In other news, folks, we've got also some reports from the Maine Policy Institute, the Maine Policy Institute. And here's just a brief rundown of what Janet has proposed, not only during her budget tax session recently, sent out to Maine Public TV and some networks in our state, but also some information that's come across to us through Mr. Trump's White House that didn't sit well again with Janet because, you see, she's not playing nice like typical deflect-o-crat governors, blue states. This one is on transgender healthcare executive orders versus Maine policy on the issue. And the speaker you're about to hear is a Harris Pate of the Maine Policy Institute.
That are worth watching, particularly as it relates to maybe touching on some of us and what we're doing here in Maine specifically. What do you think is most worthy of paying attention to?
Absolutely. So a lot of people have been focusing on his immigration-related executive orders, understandably. But I think what's most interesting is one regarding gender ideology, specifically in Maine. One he titled Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism. And then there's, it's a longer name than that, but if someone were to look up that, they would find it. And this is something he issued on day one, and it's essentially, to summarize it, because it is a bit of a complex legal issue, in 2020, the Supreme Court reinterpreted Title IX and Title VII federal anti-discrimination law so that sex-based discrimination includes, which is illegal federally, also includes gender identity and sexual orientation. And this was an employment case, Bostock v. Clayton County, where the court was deciding whether a man who had been fired for being gay was fired illegally. And the court essentially said that this man was fired illegally because while sexual orientation discrimination is not covered under Title VII, which is a federal and in part anti-discrimination in employment law, sex-based discrimination is illegal. And their argument was the employees of this company, the women were allowed to be attracted to men without being fired, but the men were not. Therefore, firing a man for being gay is also sex-based discrimination. And
because it's unique to that gender, yeah.
Right, exactly. They said this employer was applying certain rules to men that they did, or requirements to men that they did not apply to women. And they also said this applies to trans issues. If a trans person says, I identify as a woman and I'm trying to apply to a sports team, for example, but they're a biological male, they may not be allowed in. But if they were a biological female, they would be. And they said this also applies to those cases.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because this was actually a Justice Gorsuch opinion, a Trump appointee. This was actually, in many ways, a conservative interpretation of the text of Title VII and Title IX, a very strict textualist interpretation. So it shows how judges very often interpret laws in ways that a lot of people may not think so.
So there's that on the transgender issue, folks. That's just the nutshell. For more, you can check on Maine Policy Institute's website, and they have lots of audio and video there that they can certainly provide for just about anybody who wants to take a look at it. As we move on here, folks, the Maine Republicans, the GOP, had a press conference just not that long ago after her budget session announcement on taxes and everything else that's supposed to happen. This is just another look as to one of the offshore windmills, the program that's going to be temporarily halted and may stop altogether. But this one, folks, without reading all of this right here for you, it's in the state of Virginia. And this we brought forward to you on Firm, one of our podcasts, about 2 years ago. It's going on, folks. They don't give a damn about the Constitution. They don't give a damn about free speech. They don't give a damn about your rights and your freedoms, folks, because they think that we're not intellectually fit to vote for someone like Donald Trump. And that's putting it mildly, ladies and gentlemen. Very mildly. So here comes the fight again, folks. Hopefully most of you Mainers out there are citizens of Maine. You fine citizens of Maine, hardworking. Do recognize Billy Bob Falkingham, who is the minority leader for the Maine legislature. And this is one of the announcements that they made following Janet Mills' tax budget plan that she had on a weeknight. I believe it was on a Tuesday, not too long ago. But Mr. Falkingham is not the speaker. The speaker here that we have, folks, is GOP Senator Trey Stewart of Aroostook County. Here's what he had to say.
Next up, folks, is Maine House Republicans speak out against Janet Mills' proposed taxes and tax increases in her new budget.
The goal of these press conferences is to do two things. One is educate you about what the Republican priorities are this session, what we're working on, what we're fighting for under the dome down in Augusta on behalf of our constituents. And two, to give you an opportunity to hear us react to what's happening within state government, obviously being controlled by the Democrats, and what our thoughts and responses are to the various things that they are doing, rightly or wrongly, to the people of Maine. And so look for that sort of regular flow. We'll shoot for Tuesdays again after session like we have been before, and hope as many of you will be able to join us as possible. And thanks, as always, to those that are tuning in at home and on the live streams as well. With that, I am going to just briefly touch on our priorities and what you can expect to see this session, and then talk about initial reactions to the budget, and then hand it over to my House counterpart, Representative Falkingham. Republicans are committed to a number of things this session. That includes what you heard on the campaign trail from legislative Republicans, namely getting energy costs under control, looking at how we do property taxes in Maine, getting a handle on that, and possibly a complete revamping of the system. Looking at welfare reform, particularly as it relates to this upcoming supplemental budget that you've seen proposed by the governor. There is absolutely space within that document to address the need for welfare reform that has been far too generous across the state of Maine. You've heard us talk about that for years. Now is the time, more than ever, to get a handle on what has been happening across Maine and why we have become the mecca of New England states, with folks flocking to access our benefits. It doesn't need to be that way. We can fix it. Now is the time.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. So what do we do, folks, about the tax and spend tactics by deflect-o-crats like Janet Mills here? Her instant tirades and slams against President Trump's mandates and some executive orders. He's only been at it for 3 weeks, for goodness sakes. What the hell's the matter here? Ding dong. Get over it. It's terrible is what it is. All she's about, folks, as far as Janet Mills is concerned, and Aaron Fry, the Attorney General, who reappointed himself practically, with all he had to do was give a nod to Janet and say, "Hey, I want to come back again for another 2-year term." Okay. Well, what this is all about, folks, is once again that we have been pointing out at FIRM, Fairness in Reporting Media, and yours truly, Mark Merrill, owner, and a member of the Legislative Council Press Corps, by the way, since 2018. These special rights that Janet screams about, and the Shelley Pingreys out there, and the Susan Collins, and the Angus Kings, and the Jared Golden, even though he's still not dry behind the ears yet, doesn't want to be left out. screaming for special rights for transgenders and keep coming to Maine for surgeries and ignore them without financial federal monies cut back if the governor refuses to cooperate. Because Trump's going to do it. It's going to be a swift kick in the fiscal and year-to-year backside of blue state leaders like Mills, Whitmer in Michigan, Hochul in New York, Pritzker in Illinois, and Newsom in California. Or else, no federal monies. Nada. You better get that, you cheaters and bootlickers of the CCP. China, Russia, and the Iranian dissidents who cry to live here free? I don't think so. Leaving these issues, as always, American citizens, up to you. I'm just the messenger here, and we'd like to keep you up to date as to what's happening. God forbid to our precious state. Even when we have the only person in the country, along with his Vice President, J.D. Vance, that can do something about turning the tide and stopping the nonsense and the billions of dollars of wasted money on projects like wind off Sears Island and the entire coast of the state of Maine eventually, if you'd let her. So we'll let you, in particular, make up your mind, folks, and let us know about it. While we all wait in our particular states of confusion, as previously mentioned just now, and hope and pray always for guidance from God Almighty for help. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us, and as always, we leave you with this right here. Our contact, where you can find us all the time for our podcasts. Rumble.com/fairnessmedia1. Rumble.com/fairnessmedia1. And our podcast you can also find on Twitter, YouTube, and all the time, folks. We can't emphasize the bottom one enough. So we want to make sure that you get it right there. fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. And we appreciate your suggestions from this point forward, as always. Meantime, folks, everyone stay safe as well in traveling, and stay warm during our cold weather, winter weather. Peace to everyone.